The grand hall of the naval base hummed with tension and anticipation. Service members stood in perfect formation, cameras flashed, and reporters whispered predictions about the ceremony honoring Navy veterans. All eyes were waiting for the arrival of President Donald Trump. Among the sailors stood Petty Officer Daniel Hayes, just 26 years old. His uniform was crisp, yet his posture felt heavier than the rest. His gaze was distant, as though he was carrying a weight no one else could see. When Trump entered, the room filled with handshakes, smiles, and warm exchanges. The president moved through the crowd, thanking sailors one by one, until his eyes landed on Daniel. Something about the young man's expression made him stop. Daniel's lips pressed tightly together, his eyes glistening. When Trump extended his hand, Daniel reached out, but his grip trembled. Tears spilled down his cheeks before he could stop them. The hall froze, cameras went silent. Even the whispers died away. Trump tilted his head, his voice quiet yet steady. "Son, what's wrong?" Daniel tried to speak, but his voice cracked. "Sir, I didn't come here for recognition. I came because I don't know if I can keep serving anymore." The atmosphere in the hall grew heavy. Officers shifted uneasily, unsure how to react. But instead of brushing it aside, Trump placed a firm hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You have my attention." Every ear in the room leaned closer. Daniel wiped at his tears, embarrassed, yet unable to stop. He had always been strong, disciplined, never one to break in public. But months of unspoken pain had finally caught up. "Sir," he began, voice trembling, "I joined the Navy to make my father proud. He served before me. He taught me that honor means sacrifice. But what do you do when the sacrifice never ends?" The hall was silent. Even hardened officers seemed rooted to the spot, their eyes locked on the exchange. "My father died while I was deployed," Daniel continued, his throat tight. "I never got to say goodbye. And now my mother's alone. Every time I leave, I wonder if I'll lose her too. I wear this uniform proudly, but it feels like it's costing me my family." Trump's expression softened, his usual commanding presence replaced with something gentler. "You feel torn between duty and love," he said quietly. Daniel nodded, tears falling freely. "Yes, sir. And sometimes, I don't know if I'm strong enough to choose both." The words struck deep. Even the toughest sailors blinked back emotion, reminded of their own families waiting at home. Trump leaned closer, his tone lower, carrying the weight of the moment. "Son, you're not alone in this battle." He gestured for everyone to sit. What began as a ceremony had become something much deeper, something raw and unforgettable. He motioned for Daniel to join him at a small table. Cameras clicked again, but the moment felt strangely intimate. Trump's voice softened. "Daniel, service isn't just about fighting wars, it's about carrying the invisible weight most people will never see. Tell me about your father." Daniel swallowed hard. "He was a machinist's mate. Served 20 years. He used to write me letters during training, reminding me that no matter how far I went, family would wait. But the last letter never came. He died before I could even see him again." Trump nodded, listening closely. "And your mother? She's fragile now. I'm all she has. Every call, her voice sounds weaker. I keep asking myself, am I being a good son, or just a good sailor?" The room shifted. Other sailors nodded unconsciously. They had all felt that same guilt. Trump leaned forward, tapping his chest. "Daniel, you're not weak for feeling this. You're human. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought at sea, they're fought right here." Daniel's mind drifted to his childhood home in Virginia. Smell of his mother's cooking, his father humming old Navy tunes in the garage. His voice cracked. "My mom begged me not to re-enlist after Dad passed, but I couldn't quit. I thought leaving would dishonor him. Now, every deployment feels like I'm losing her bit by bit." Trump's tone grew reflective. "Sacrifice comes in many forms, but love is never something you're meant to give up. It's what makes you strong." Daniel clenched his fists. "Sometimes it feels like the Navy took my life and gave me nothing to live for." Trump's gaze softened. "Maybe your father's greatest wish wasn't for you to repeat his sacrifice, but to honor it by living, not just serving." Daniel looked at Trump for the first time, not as a commander-in-chief, but as a man who understood. Then, hesitating, Daniel whispered, "There's something else, sir, something I've never told anyone." The hall stiffened. Officers braced themselves. Daniel exhaled shakily. "Last deployment, I froze. We were in a danger zone. I couldn't move when the alarm went off. My shipmates had to pull me together. They told me it happens, but I can't forgive myself. Every night I see it again. I wonder if I even deserve this uniform." Trump's eyes narrowed, not in judgment, but in focus. "Daniel, courage isn't never being afraid. It's moving forward despite fear. One moment doesn't erase your years of strength. You're still here. That matters." Daniel nodded, though shame still lingered. "You think weakness defines you?" Trump pressed gently. "No. The people who never admit weakness are the ones who break in silence. You've done the hardest thing, you've spoken it aloud." For the first time, Daniel felt the crushing weight on his chest begin to lift. Not vanish, but lighten, because it was no longer his alone. The sailors and officers around them understood this wasn't weakness on display, was courage. Pure, unfiltered courage. Even the reporters lowered their cameras, unwilling to break the spell of the moment. Trump turned to the room. How many of you have felt what Daniel feels? Torn between duty and family. Haunted by things beyond your control. Slowly, hands began to rise. Dozens of them. The truth rippled through the hall. Daniel was not alone. Trump looked back at him. You see, Daniel, your story isn't just yours. By speaking it, you've given others permission to feel human again. The silence in the hall was no longer heavy, it was sacred. Daniel whispered, I thought admitting this would shame me. Trump leaned in. Son, you just became the bravest man in this room. The sailors nodded, their eyes shining with agreement. For the first time, Daniel didn't feel broken. He felt like a voice others had desperately needed. Trump asked gently, do you still have your father's last letter? Daniel froze. Yes, sir. I never opened it. I was afraid it would make his death too real. It's still sealed, in my locker. Gasps rippled through the hall. Trump placed a hand firmly on his shoulder. Maybe that letter isn't meant to break you. Maybe it's meant to free you. Tears welled in Daniel's eyes. But what if I can't bear the words inside? Then you'll know this. He loved you enough to write them, Trump replied. But locking it away, that's what's been eating you alive. Daniel trembled, realizing his deepest secret was now open. Promise me, Trump said softly. Read it, not for me, not for the Navy, for yourself, and for your mother. Daniel's throat tightened. Slowly, he nodded. Yes, sir. The room was electric. Everyone present knew this was more than a conversation, it was a turning point in a man's life. That night, Trump insisted on calling Daniel's mother. When she answered, her frail voice cracked as Trump said warmly, Mrs. Hayes, I'm here with your son. She gasped. My Daniel, tears filled Daniel's eyes. Mom, it's me. I'm okay. Trump added gently, your son just showed me what true courage looks like. You raised a fine man. Her sobs echoed through the line. I was so afraid I'd lose him, like I lost his father. Thank you. When Daniel ended the call, Trump's words were firm. That woman isn't just waiting for a sailor. She's waiting for her son. Don't ever forget that. For the first time in months, Daniel felt lighter. The following day, sitting in his bunk, Daniel finally held his father's unopened letter. His hand shook, his heart raced as he stared at the faded envelope, the handwriting that still carried his father's presence. His shipmate stood silently nearby, giving him space. With trembling fingers, Daniel tore it open. Son, the letter began. If you're reading this, it means I never made it back home. But son, don't let my absence steal your life. Promise me you'll live, not just serve. Take care of your mother. Build a family. Don't spend your years chasing nothing but sacrifice. My greatest pride will always be you. Daniel's chest tightened as his eyes blurred over the ink. His father's voice seemed to echo through every word. The final lines shook him most. Remember, courage isn't dying for your country. It's living fully while you can. Carry my love, not my burden. The letter slipped into his lap as his shoulders shook. His shipmates gathered around him, resting, steadying hands on his back. For the first time, Daniel felt his father's presence, not as a weight holding him down, but as a freedom lifting him up. Thank you, Dad, he whispered. And in that quiet bunk room, something inside him shifted forever. When Daniel next walked into the great hall, he carried himself differently. He wasn't the broken sailor who had once wept before the president, he was something more. Trump, there for a follow-up ceremony, noticed immediately. You read it, didn't you? Trump asked softly. Daniel nodded. Yes, sir, my father. He wanted me to live. Trump smiled, not the usual commanding grin, but something gentler. Then you're honoring him more than ever. Soon after, sailors began approaching Daniel, one by one, sharing struggles they had hidden for years. A young seaman admitted quietly, my dad passed too. I never told anyone. Another confessed, missing his daughter's birth while deployed. What had once been a rigid, formal hall was now filled with something different. Humanity. Trump addressed the room. Daniel gave you permission tonight, not to quit, but to remember, you are more than uniforms. You are lives, families, futures. Don't bury your humanity. That's where your strength comes from. The applause that followed wasn't loud or ceremonial. It was steady, heartfelt, like the beating of many hearts in unison. Calling Daniel forward again, Trump lifted a medal. I plan to honor sailors tonight with this. But Daniel reminded me of something more important. Recognition isn't about shiny objects, it's about truth. He paused, lowering the medal. Daniel, I could pin this on you, but instead, I want you to carry something greater, your father's words. Let them be the medal on your chest. The room gasped. A president deferring a medal was almost unheard of. Daniel's eyes widened. Sir, I don't deserve anything. Trump's voice rose. You deserve to live. And every smile from your mother, every moment you choose life, that will be your medal. The sailors erupted in applause, louder now, moved by the rare gesture. Daniel bowed his head. Thank you, Mr. President, for seeing me, when I couldn't even see myself. News of the moment spread quickly through the Navy. What had once been taboo, speaking openly about mental strain, grief, and family sacrifice, suddenly had a voice. Commanders began starting meetings with questions about well-being, not just performance. Daniel's story had cracked open something larger than himself. A week later, his commanding officer approached him. "Hayes, I want you to speak to the new recruits. Tell them what you told us. They need to know. Strength isn't silence." Daniel froze. "Me? Sir, I'm not a speaker." The officer chuckled. "You already spoke and it moved to President." Nervously, Daniel agreed. That week, he stood before a room of wide-eyed recruits. He spoke not just about his service, but about his doubts, his frozen moment, and his father's letter. Many recruits sat stunned, some holding back tears. One whispered afterward, "I thought I was weak for missing my family. You showed me it's normal." It was then Daniel realized his pain had a purpose. By sharing it, he was giving others the strength he once thought he lacked. Slowly, the shame that once consumed him began to transform into something greater: legacy. On air, Force 1, Trump reflected quietly. An aide asked, "Sir, why did you spend so much time with one sailor?" Trump looked out the window. "Because that one sailor carried the voices of many. Sometimes leadership isn't about speeches, it's about listening." He paused. You know what froze that hall? It wasn't his tears. It was the truth in them. Truth silences everything else. Weeks later, Daniel returned home on leave. His frail but glowing mother waited on the porch. When he stepped out of the taxi, she ran to him, arms trembling but strong enough to hold her son. "You came back," she whispered, tears streaming. Daniel hugged her tightly. "I promised Dad, and I promised you." Inside, he handed her the opened letter. Together, they read it aloud, crying at the weight of the words, laughing at the little jokes scribbled in the margins. She kissed his forehead. "Your father's spirit lives in you. Don't ever doubt that." That night at the kitchen table, Daniel realized something profound. For years, he believed service meant leaving home behind, but maybe real service meant returning whole, honest, and ready to live. Months later, a letter from the White House arrived. Inside was an invitation. "Petty Officer Daniel Hayes, you are invited to speak at a National Military Appreciation." Yvette, his hands trembled. "Me speak again." His mother smiled proudly. "Your story didn't end in that hall, Daniel. It's still being written." When the day arrived, Daniel stood before 1,000 soldiers, families, and leaders. Trump introduced him. "This sailor showed me, and the world, what true courage looks like. Tonight, he reminds us that strength is born from vulnerability." Daniel spoke, beginning not with his achievements, but with his tears. He told them about freezing, about guilt, about the unopened letter. By the time he finished, the crowd was on its feet in thunderous applause. Families embraced. Soldiers wiped their eyes. Daniel realized he was no longer speaking just for himself. He was speaking for every silent soul carrying invisible battles. His speech went viral. Headlines read, "Navy sailors' tears inspire a nation." Messages flooded his inbox. Strangers wrote, "You gave me courage to seek help." Veterans said, "You reminded me I'm not alone." Families thanked him for voicing what their loved ones never could. Daniel told his mother quietly, "I never wanted fame. I just wanted to survive my truth." She squeezed his hand, "And by surviving it, you helped others do the same." Navy leadership soon introduced new mental health programs, citing Daniel's testimony as a catalyst. His father's final wish was unfolding not through medals or battles, but through life itself. Months later, Daniel stepped into the same hall where he had once broken down before the president. This time, the crowd roared in applause. Trump stood at the podium, smiling. "The last time Daniel stood here, he froze us all. Tonight, he reminds us what happens when one man chooses honesty over silence." Daniel spoke with calm confidence. "I used to think breaking down was weakness. Now I know, was the beginning of strength." Don't bury your stories, share them, because when we speak, we heal not just ourselves, but others. The hall erupted. Daniel, once the sailor in tears, now stood as a symbol of resilience. After the event, Trump called him aside. "Son, I told you medals aren't everything, but tonight, I want to give you one not for service, but for courage." He pinned it on Daniel's chest. "This is not for silence, but for breaking it. Not for perfection, but for honesty. You changed lives, Daniel." Mist in his eyes, Daniel touched the medal. "Thank you, sir. But my real medal was opening my father's letter." Trump smiled. "And sharing it with the world." Years later, Daniel sat on the porch of that same Virginia home, his own son beside him. The boy asked, "Dad, were you ever scared in the Navy?" Daniel chuckled softly. "Yes, son, many times. But I learned something important. Bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to live despite it." The boy leaned closer. "Grandpa would be proud, right?" Daniel smiled, holding the worn letter. "He already is. And now, so am I." That night, Daniel placed the letter into a box labeled "For my son." Alongside it, he added his own words. "Strength is not hiding your tears, it's sharing them." If you ever feel alone, remember even the strongest men cried. And that's where courage begins. The circle was complete. What began as tears in a hall had become a legacy passed down through generations, and somewhere beyond the stars. His father surely smiled, knowing his son had found peace, not in silence, but in truth.